Full spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day starting right now, including the post-credit. Go watch it. Come back. Okay, about 2 hours into this movie, I leaned over to my wife in the dark and I said, this could lose 20 to 30 minutes. I hadn't read a review, I hadn't even seen a take, nobody handed me that, I just felt it. And then the next day I found out Destin Daniel Cretton already did it. The assembly on this movie ran about 170 minutes, and what you watched is 145. He took out almost exactly the amount of time I was sitting there in the dark guessing at. He did it before any of us ever saw a frame. He's on the record saying the length is right where it should be, and there's almost nothing left on the cutting room floor. And that stopped me. Because if you cut the 25 minutes and it still plays like the 25 minutes are in there, then the 25 minutes were never the problem. Every one of us complaining about the length of this movie, me in that theater included, has been complaining about a number. It was never a number. It's the order. What's up, my noodles? All right, so let me walk you through what this movie is actually doing to you, because I've been chewing on it for a day and I think I've got it. You get a set piece. It's enormous. It works and it leaves you wrung out in your chair. And that's the movie operating at a very high level. And then before you've come down, you get another piece of story. New information, new stakes, new problem. And then it climbs to another crest and then it hands you more. Crest, information, and you never once get a moment to live with any of it. The floor never comes back up to meet you, okay? That's escalation with no release. And escalation with no release is a rhythm problem, not a length problem. Those two get treated as the same note, and they're not. Now, by itself, that pattern's not a flaw. That's efficient construction, and most movies run it all day long because most movies don't have peaks high enough for it to really cost you anything. This one does. These set pieces are enormous. So you're spending real energy on every climb and getting none of it back. And by the 4th or 5th cycle, you're not bored, you're depleted. And a depleted person has exactly one sentence available to describe the condition, and that sentence is, man, this was long. Which is the trick this movie has played on the entire conversation about it. Because the bored guy and the depleted guy say the identical 6 words. The bored guy checks the watch because nothing's happening. The depleted guy checks his watch because too much is happening and he can't process it fast enough to stay with it. Same complaint, opposite diagnosis. And every explanation I've seen for the length of this movie picked the bored guy. And it's very plainly the other one. You want the tell? Okay. This is the lowest critic score of the 4 Tom Holland movies and the highest audience score of all 9 live-action Spider-Man movies. And both camps walked out saying the same thing about the runtime. When 2 rooms agree, that agree on nothing land on the same 6 words, those 6 words are measuring something neither room has already actually named. And I should tell you where I actually land, because it's going to sound strange right after. This is my favorite Spider-Man movie ever made. Now, No Way Home used to be mostly for the scope of what it pulled off. Before that, Spider-Man 2, this one is above both, and it isn't close, because it is the most Spider-Man-y Spider-Man movie that has ever Spider-Man. So I'm the guy who made the length complaint first, unprompted, in the dark, before anybody handed it to me. And I'm the guy telling you it's the best one. Those don't fight each other, and by the time we're done, you'll see they're the same sentence. Which is my problem with the word that keeps getting stuck to this thing, and that word is dull. Dull and downbeat and self-serious. Sad on purpose is not the same thing as dull. Those are very different words, and this movie is sad on purpose from the top down. Michael Giacchino stood up at Comic-Con and said out loud, I want to make a sad Spider-Man movie. Cretton has said in every interview he's given that the whole question was, who is Peter Parker without Ned, without MJ, without Aunt May, without Tony Stark? That is the assignment. Watching the sad Spider-Man movie and coming back to report that it was sad, that's not analysis. That's a plot summary with a frown on it. Here's the part that's a little embarrassing for me, but it's the strongest thing I've got, so you're getting it. I walked out of that theater with this at a tentative 8. And overnight it went to a 9. Sitting with it right now, it's moving higher than that, and I've not really watched it a second time. One guy's reaction, sure, but look at what that tells you. If I'm right about the depletion in the room, you're paying for this movie physically the whole way through, and that cost is sitting on top of every single thing you feel about it. Then you sleep and the cost clears, and what's left behind is the construction. And the construction is excellent. Which is why I don't think anybody who watched this at a press screening and filed that same night was lying to you about what they felt. They wrote it down before the movie had finished happening to them, before it had crystallized. All right, the third act, because that's where my whole read could come apart. So let me pick the fight myself instead of waiting for somebody else to do it. The smartest thing I've heard said against this movie goes like this. The last stretch hands the film to a brand new character. It stops being about Peter Parker and it turns into a backdoor pilot for whatever's coming next. And I want to be fair to that one because it's the only version of this complaint that isn't about mood. It's about the architecture. It's the closest anybody has gotten, and it has the shape exactly right and the cause exactly backwards. Watch what the back half actually does. It keeps handing you a villain and then revoking it. Sadie Sink's character is the threat. She's jumping through bodies. She's hitting damage control. She's the problem. Then Peter and Frank get in the inhibitor onto the back of her neck. Metzger tranquilizes her. She goes down saying her sister's name, and it has the exact shape of a third act resolution. The score does the thing. Your body says, all right, we're dead. And then MJ mentions almost offhand that she doesn't remember being possessed at all. And the floor drops out because that means Bill Metzger's been lying to Peter's face for the entire picture. So now the antagonist is damage control. And then Jean pushes past her own ceiling inside the cell and freezes 1.5 miles of Manhattan solid. So now it's her again. For a completely different reason. And then Frank takes his shot, Peter takes the bullet, and it reads as an ending one more time. That is 4 false resolutions, and every one of them charges you right back up. Which is the same escalation with no release, except now it's the story running at it instead of the stunt department. So the last act didn't get hijacked by something else. The last act is the movie's own rhythm showing up in a different department. And it's the more honest version because at least in the action, you can see the peaks coming. And here's where I get off the bus with everybody because there's one take going around today and I don't think it's right at all. The take is, gotcha, Sadie Sink isn't the villain. Metzger's the real villain. And sure, except I don't think that's what happened either. Jean Grey was the antagonist. She was the antagonist because she was running counter to the protagonist. That's what the word means, and it's the only thing that it means at all, and it does not make her the villain, which is exactly why the back half spends its time showing you what was driving her, and damage control isn't really the villain either. Damage control is a government agency doing what government agencies do, which is overreach and overreach and overreach, until one day somebody makes them sit in front of a committee and answer for it. The movie refuses to hand anybody the villain chair. It's not a twist they fumbled. That's deliberate, and I think it's the most grown-up decision in the picture. And something is still missing off the table here. I don't know if it's an Oscorp connection. I don't know what it is, but whatever damage control is being built into is bigger than what the movie showed us. So let me say the quiet part. You have a federal agency with a supermax, a black budget, and an active research program dedicated to building hardware that switches off superhuman ability. That infrastructure has exactly one destination, boys and girls. Sentinels. I'm not telling you that's confirmed, and nobody has confirmed anything. I'm telling you that's what the infrastructure is for, and this movie put every piece of it on screen and expected you to be looking at the girl. And I can tell you exactly where I first got nervous, because it wasn't the Jean Grey reveal, it was way earlier, and it was a conversation. Peter goes to see Bruce Banner at the college, and he won't give Bruce his real name, so he introduces himself as Ned, which is very funny and also pretty sad. And they start talking about building an inhibitor, and I'm fine with it because Peter's building it for himself. He's trying to hold his own DNA down, and then the conversation slides just slightly out of this one application for this one person and into something generalized, something that would work on anybody. And I turned and looked at my wife with big worried eyes because that is restriction collar territory. That's the front end of power suppression as public policy. I had that reaction on instinct in a theater with no notes in front of me. I was pretty pleased with myself. And then I went and checked, and it turns out I was years late because in She-Hulk, Damage Control is already running a supermax that holds superhuman prisoners using technology built specifically to null their abilities. That has been on screen since 2022, and in Ms. Marvel, Damage Control is in armed standoffs in public with a teenage girl with powers. So Peter Parker's not planting a seed in that scene. Peter Parker is handing a design upgrade to a program that's been running for half a decade, and he has no idea. And then this movie makes him stand there and watch what that program does to a teenage girl. That's a payoff that's been sitting in plain sight since 2022, and I walked straight past it into the room. Which is also why I don't buy that this movie is Marvel doing homework. Damage Control was born in a Spider-Man movie. They're the reason Adrian Toomes becomes the Vulture in Homecoming, because they take his salvage contract out from under him. They came back in No Way Home and arrested Peter's entire family, and every time they've returned since, they've gotten worse. That's not a foreign object welded into a Spider-Man picture. That's the one franchise where this organization has always actually mattered, coming home to collect. And I have to give you the thing I haven't seen one person say out loud, and I was listening for it the entire runtime, so I'm fairly confident. The movie never says the word mutant. Not one time. It says telepath. It even says enhanced once. It walks past 100 opportunities. Everybody writing about this film is using that word, and that is their word. It is not the movie's word, which tells you the term hasn't been coined yet where we're standing, which tells you exactly where we sit on the timeline, which makes the last shot of Jean Grey mean something specific. She gets on a bus. The bus is headed upstate. Now that's me guessing, and I want to be clear about it. But you gotta ask yourself, what's upstate? Now, let's talk craft, because this is a beautifully made movie, and I have exactly one real complaint about it, and it's not the one going around. John Watts directed the first 3 of these, and before this one went into production, he sat down for an interview and said, whoever comes next shouldn't bother shooting the web swinging practically. His words. It's boring. It looks dumb. It looks like a monkey swinging on a vine when you put someone on a rope, and then don't waste your time. That's my advice to the next Spider-Man director. Cretton went and did it anyway. There's a stunt in the very first act that took a full day to rig, a practical firebomb taking out the ground floor of a building, cars rolling, one take, no second chance at it, and that approach is all over this movie. Here's the thing about shooting practically. When it works, you're not thinking about how it got made. You're just in it. That's the entire reason to spend the money and take the insurance risk, and the marketing spent 4 months instructing you to think about it instead. Now that's a publicity failure. The filmmaking is not the failure. Which brings me to something that makes me a little crazy. I keep seeing people say, the CG in this is bad. It is not bad. Okay, these images are beautiful. The grade is doing real work. The comps hold. And if you think that's bad CGI, I don't think you know what CGI is supposed to look like. Okay, that's armchair quarterbacking with a technical word borrowed to sound like you know something. So let me actually give you one, because there is one. There's one slow motion shot in this movie where Spider-Man is sitting in the plate. And I want to be careful here because the render is fine. The asset is fine. The roto is clean. It's the lighting, the key on him is not agreeing with the key in the environment he's supposed to occupy. There's no interactive light coming off the surfaces around him, and your eye catches that mismatch a beat before your brain can name it. So for 1 second, he reads as a sticker instead of an object with mass in that space. That's a lighting integration failure. It's not bad rendering. Those two are not interchangeable no matter how often you see the words swapped. And I do a version of that job every week of my life when I build a thumbnail. Okay, I am color harmonizing the elements so they read as one image instead of 3 things stacked on top of each other. Same discipline, about 1/10,000th of the budget. Okay, that's the difference though between watching movies and making things. The comic book covers. All the way through this thing, the movie drops into slow motion and recomposes the frame into a cover. Boomerang is Amazing Spider-Man 345, the Eric Larson cover, my favorite artist. Ramrod is 221, Tarantula is 134, and it runs all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15, which is where the guy started in 1962. And Cretton's account of how that happened, it's actually pretty great. It started as an idea that he thought would be fun to do once or twice, and then they put close to 100 covers up on the walls, and the game became imagining what happened 10 seconds before or 10 seconds after each image. And I love them, okay? The fan in me loves every single one. And as a filmmaker, after about the fourth or fifth, I didn't really need any more of them. Which is this entire movie in one bit, isn't it? A great instinct designed for 2 uses, shipped at 100 covers, and nobody in the room ever calling the diminishing return. Same escalation with no release, running in the montage department. Let me correct how this movie got sold to you. The Hulk, he's the cameo. Frank Castle, he's the co-lead. I didn't expect that going in, and I'd argue Bernthal is playing a full supporting role here, and the chemistry between those two is ridiculous. My first instinct was that Frank sees Peter as the son he never got to raise, and I've backed off that. There's some of it in there, but the longer I sit with it, the more it plays as older brother, younger brother. And Cretton said something that lines up with it exactly. He said John's character is a direct reflection of Peter, and that he's showing Peter what could happen if he goes down a certain road. A reflection and a warning is a brother. It's not what a father is. While I'm on the Hulk, one note, because it's a design choice and not like really a story one. Jean uses Professor Hulk as a blunt instrument, and then she leaves, and whatever she broke on the way out lets the Savage version come back, and he reads bigger and more aggressive than he has in a long time. And that's in the silhouette and the animation, not just the writing. I liked that version a great deal. Somebody please fix the right situation. Give me a Hulk movie. Give me a Planet Hulk. Okay, there are feature scale stories sitting on a shelf over a paperwork problem, and we're all poor for it. And Frank is part of I think the smartest structure call in this movie, which is that we open in media res. Okay, we don't pick up where No Way Home left off 4 years. 4 years are gone, okay? And he's already fought Frank Castle before we got there. He's fought Scorpion before, more than once apparently. He's got a routine. He's built himself an AI assistant and a printer. He's a small-scale Tony Stark now, and none of that gets explained to you. It's simply true when you arrive. And his Rogues Gallery is used the way a Rogues Gallery ought to be used, which is as texture. Boomerang, Tarantula, Ramrod, Tombstone, all in a montage, all of them telling you what 4 years of this looked like, and not one of them driving plot, which I think is the fix for the thing Spider-Man movies have always gotten wrong, which is stacking 6 antagonists across the front and demanding they all carry weight. This one lets them be the job, and I love that. Ramrod's in there because Ramrod is the only villain in this entire picture who actually appears in the 2008 Brand New Day run. While we're here, the Hand is a feint. The campaign sold you a Hand movie and their set dressing. There's no Daredevil touchback at all. Frank never so much as references them, and I'd have taken one throwaway line from Ned about a curfew to tie it off. Although I suspect Marvel's deliberately kind of backing off how tightly the television connects into the films, and honestly, that's probably the safer bet, which I think is a good place to get into the comics because this title's being sneaky. Brand New Day. The comic is 2008. It's the relaunch immediately after One More Day, where Peter's marriage is traded away and the world forgets he's Spider-Man. And the entire mandate of that relaunch was back to basics. Broke, single street level, new supporting cast. That's the branding on this movie, and it fits the setup perfectly. But the story this movie's actually adapting is not Brand New Day, it's the other. That's 2005. That's the one where Peter's body starts changing on him, where he cocoons, where he comes out with organic webbing and a far more primal instinct set, where the spider side starts winning. Sadie Sink's character says it out loud in this movie that the spider is following the man, which I think is that arc's entire thesis statement on the page. And in the comics, Peter goes to Bruce Banner about it because Banner is who you go to about radiation, which is precisely what happens here. And here's the joke, and I don't think anybody's told it yet. Organic webbing is one of the things that real Brand New Day relaunch took away from him. So the movie, named after the storyline that removed organic webbing, is the movie that hands him organic webbing. Jean has a sister in this movie, Sarah Gray, and Damage Control took her, experimented on her, and killed her trying to replicate what she could do. And that is the engine of Jean's entire rampage. So I went and checked because I couldn't really remember whether Jean's sister was a telepath on the page. She's real. Sarah Gray, first mentioned in 1966, first actually drawn during the Dark Phoenix saga, and in the comics, she's not a telepath at all. She's a regular human. She marries, has 2 kids, learns her sister's a mutant, becomes an advocate for mutant rights, and then she's murdered by anti-mutant extremists and absorbed by the Phalanx. Except Chris Claremont's original plan after Dark Phoenix was to leave Jean dead and reveal that Sarah had latent powers and put her on the team in Jean's place. Now, he never got to run it. Marvel finally brought her back and revealed that dormant ability in a book last year. So this movie is executing an abandoned Claremont plan about 40 years late, which is the kind of thing that makes me want to lie down. Look at what they changed about how she dies, because that's the part that matters. On the page, Sarah Gray is killed by bigots. In this movie, Sarah Gray is killed by a government agency running experiments to replicate her powers. They move the threat off of hate and onto the state, which is the same idea I was telling you about with that whole inhibitor conversation arriving from a completely different direction, through a completely different department, by a completely different route. When one idea shows up 3 times through 3 doors, it's not coincidence. Somebody in that room decided it. Okay, the heart of it. Peter takes MJ to Frank's place to keep her safe, and she finds the letter. And this is the letter he wrote her at the end of No Way Home and never delivered. And earlier in the film, Jean already weaponized that letter against him. It really sucks. She possesses MJ. She gets inside Peter's head. She finds it in there, and she stages true love's first kiss right in front of him. And then mocks him with it. That's a horrible thing to do to a person. And the movie knows it, that it's horrible. So by the time MJ is sitting there with the real letter in her hands, we've already been given this exact ending once and had it taken back, which is the same false resolution beat run one more time in the only department the movie hadn't tried it in yet. And then she reads it and she tells him she doesn't remember him. There's nothing in there. The spell simply worked. And then she takes him upstairs anyway, and they hang out with Ned, and he's in the suit the entire time, mask on, sitting in an apartment with 2 people who have no idea who he is. And it felt so good. That's the movie. It's not an accident either, because there's a costume motif running underneath this whole picture. Every time you get Peter in the mask without the suit, or the suit without the mask, the frame is telling you which half of him is currently driving. Watch for it on a rewatch. It's disciplined. Then, the ending. Peter's buying flowers for Aunt May's grave. Ned walks in. Peter introduces himself as Peter. And their old handshake just happens. Both of them automatically. And Ned looks up and goes, Peter? There's a read going around on this. And I want to give it to you straight because it's a good one. And it's got real evidence under it. The argument is that MJ is already remembering and hiding it. She's on that roof at the end holding a necklace Peter gave her, a necklace she has no reason to be holding. And earlier when the Hulk has him completely beaten and Peter says, it's me, Peter, the Hulk hesitates. Those are 2 real pieces of evidence, and if you buy them, Ned is the second domino and the spell is coming apart. Now, I'm not there, and I know that puts me in the minority. What I think happened is Ned's body ran that handshake on pure muscle memory, and then his mouth connected the name he'd just been handed of the guy standing in front of him, and that sort of crosses his face as him landing on, oh, you're Spider-Man. That's association. That's not restored memory, okay? Now, could the magic be a factor since he handled a sling ring in the last movie? And yeah, I know that was contrived, okay? Sure, it's on the table, but I think the simple version is the correct one, and I'd rather tell you what I actually believe and be wrong out loud than take the popular reading because it's tidier. So there you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway doing a know-it-all yourself. What's the neural index for Spider-Man? Brand New Day? let me put it all of it on scale, because against it, I've got a movie that never lets you live with anything, that stacks its peaks until you're depleted and calling that length. A cover gag that outstays itself by a good half dozen appearances, a first-person gimmick that shows up and leaves, one composite where the lighting doesn't marry, a sniper shot that doesn't survive being looked at directly. All of that is real. And for it, I've got the most Spider-Man that Spider-Man has ever been on screen. A picture that opens in media res and trusts you to keep up with it. Frank Castle and Peter Parker in a two-hander I never saw coming. Practical stunt work that a previous director of this exact franchise publicly advised against attempting, and a movie that walked out of that theater at an 8 in my head and has climbed pretty much every hour, since, without me ever having watched it again. That's a 10 out of 10. Okay, that is my favorite Spider-Man movie ever made, and I know that lands strange after everything I just told you about the length, but I'd rather be honest than tidy. Cretton said this whole film grows out of Peter misunderstanding what Aunt May told him, and learning across the movie what she actually meant. And then the movie takes the lesson and puts May inside a memory and hands it to a second lonely kid who has also decided she has to do this by herself. With great power comes great responsibility, taught again on screen to the next generation of this franchise. That's the thing they called downbeat. All right, your turn. Drop your know-it-all index for Brand New Day in the comments and give me a real answer on this one, because I want to know if I'm out here by myself. Does Ned actually remember, or did his hand just kind of do the handshake before his brain caught up? All right, I've talked myself into both of those answers twice. And one more thing, my wife sitting right next to me when that tracker pinged past the moon said out loud, "Wait, why is Spider-Man in space?" That is the right question. It's the only question that matters walking out of that theater, and I think the answer is Secret Wars. And that's a guess nobody has confirmed at all. And I break down genre film and television craft here every week. Not one franchise, so if this earned it, do me a favor, hit subscribe. All right, guys, until next week, never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all. All right, guys.